We continue our focus on security with a conversation now with Channels Television's in-house data analyst, Mr. Babajide Ogunsonwo. Great to have you again on the news at 10. Are we okay? You have two guns on the table. They're not live, are they?
Oh yes, it's all to be able to clearly understand where we are with Boko Haram. Are we achieving success, and how are we going to be successful in unlocking the minds of those girls from all the criminal activities they've been through in all of these days. So
would you say we've been successful in the war against Boko Haram?
So it all depends on how we want to manage and how we want to define success. How we want us to define success first is our success in being able to quickly unlock their thoughts into new things. So there's going to be a vacuum right now, and we need to free up their minds and replace that vacuum with something. And I would suggest we use a lot of education. That's one way to look at it. But even if we look at how we've handled this Boko Haram situation, it reminds me of 3 decades ago when such similar violence had occurred then in Jimeta, Yola State under President Buhari. And he then visited the site of a lot of those religious uprisings. Then it wasn't called Boko Haram, it was called some renegade Muslim group that came up. But what we'll find out then is the attacks then used a lot of swords, and those wounded had lots of wounds based on machetes. Only 3 people, based on about 60 people that were wounded, had gunshot wounds. Here's what the report that we have based on the Global Terrorism Database, which accurately monitors deaths around the world due to terrorist attacks. They say that we've had 18,049 deaths due to Boko Haram between 2001, when the offensive started, and the end of last year. But here's what is interesting. They say that less than 8,000 of those deaths were due to bombs. They've said more than 8,000 were due to these 2 things. So here's what it means. If we are to look at it based on the weapons that are being used in the fight against Boko Haram, we see a lot of terrorists using weapons. So we clearly need to kick off Operation Mop Up to be able to take out these guns off the arms of the terrorists. But if we look at it from 2010 to 2015, we'll see for the first time last year, we've seen a decline in deaths due to terrorism in Nigeria.
But it spiked in 2014.
It did spike in 2014, and that's where a lot of the concerns started from. So we've seen 5 consecutive years of rise in deaths due to Boko Haram attacks. But last year, for the first time, we've seen a decline. So clearly, based on the report from the Global Terrorism Database, we've seen success if we look at these figures. However, if we look at that, a lot of these Boko Haram attacks right now are not just based on bombs, they are based on weapons like this. So the government indeed needs to be able to mop up these weapons from the economy.
You spoke about the girls at the beginning, and one of the agenda that Boko Haram has is to stop Western education, especially the education of girls. So how well is the government doing in improving education of girls against what Boko Haram is already preaching?
The government seems to be doing quite a lot, but the challenge is quite a lot enough. We already know that families in Borno State, for instance, do not have sufficient money. So the evidence shows that for every 100 naira a family in Borno State has, 74 naira goes into food, which is even higher than the national average, and only 0.46% goes into education. So families clearly need more support from the government. We even see that in the evidence of students failing WAEC in Borno State. So we clearly need a lot of more investments from the government regarding attacks, regarding investments for families in Borno State.
Babajide, I'm so glad that those are not real guns that you brought into the studio.
Certainly. But we do need to mop up a lot of these guns that are in the hands of the terrorists.
Always a pleasure having you join us on the news at 10. Babajide Ogunsonwo, our in-house data analyst.